Does a GoFundMe for the families that raised tons of money take the responsibility off of a person who is now a convicted murderer? No. We have the restitution hearing tomorrow, so let's go ahead and go through the documents that were posted because these really have been causing a ruckus. Hey guys, this is Jules with True Crime Reactions. Disclaimer, everything stated in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. And just like everything else in these cases we discuss here on this channel, everything is alleged. Okay, there's a restitution hearing coming up on 11/5. I'm going to be posting this on the evening of 11/4. I want to go ahead and go through the documents. This is not really an important one to me personally. It doesn't have anything to do with case fact, but again, there's a hearing. It's causing a lot of stir because it is the defendant claiming I shouldn't be paying this extra money. So let's go ahead and take a look, and then I'm going to give you guys my opinion. But considering the fact that you guys already sort of understand the way that I work when it comes to my opinion on stuff like this, I don't really take it as, oh, it's a Bryan Kohberger situation. It's an Idaho University murder situation. My opinion on this kind of stuff is going to be the exact same way my opinion is on the death penalty. It's going to be extremely generalized. So let's just go ahead and get started with the doc. So this is titled Defendant's Objection to the State's Request for Additional Restitution. Comes now Bryan C. Kohberger by and through his attorneys of record and hereby object to the state's request for additional restitution filed September 22nd, 2025. The grounds for objection are that 1. The plea agreement specified funeral expenses and funds reimbursed through Idaho Crime Victim Compensation Fund in an amount to be determined within 60 days from July 23rd, 2025. Mr. Kohberger stipulated to those amounts, resulting in court orders in the amounts of $28,956.88 on August 29th, 2025. Number 2, the additional funds sought do not qualify as an economic loss under Idaho Code 195304 because Stephen Christy Goncalves and Karen Laramie received extensive funds through multiple GoFundMe campaigns that specifically asked for and covered the expenses sought. This is not false. In my opinion, in a very generalized opinion, does a GoFundMe for the families that raised shit tons of money take the responsibility off of a person who is now a convicted murderer? No. Mr. Kohberger has no ability now or in the future to pay restitution because he is serving 4 consecutive life sentences plus 10 years. This is where I don't comprehend the point. I feel like this kind of stuff is a huge waste of taxpayer dollars when it comes to all the filings, the back and forths in court. Now we're having an unnecessary hearing. This money is never going to be paid back. Even if he does have people sending him money, putting money on books, or he does get some sort of working situation while he's in prison to make a little bit of extra dollars for nothing, it's never going to get paid off. This is not going to end up on his credit. There's not going to be any additional punishment if it doesn't get paid off. So what is the point to all of the fluctuation? This to me, again, is one of those things to where if someone is convicted of a certain kind of crime, the amount of restitution to be paid to the families or to the victim, if that crime is not where the victim is dead, then it should be the same across the board, across the country. It shouldn't have cents on the end of it. It should be a rounded number. This crime equals this amount of restitution, and that's just that. But then again, they like to make everything confusing and stupid all over the place, which is why y'all's American healthcare system is a complete mess. But let's continue. Procedural history. A judgment was entered against Mr. Kohberger on July 23rd, 2025. The plea agreement stated that state may seek restitution orders regarding funeral expenses and crime victims' compensation reimbursement in an amount to be determined. The judgment of conviction ordered $251,227.50 in criminal fines and fees. And it says here that each one was $50,000 with a total of $250,000. And then they also added in the court cost. Now, I'm not going to read all of the specifics for that one because we have gone through the specific documents for each of the family, what they were getting. The married couples were on one letter with an amount, and the parents that were no longer together had separate letters with different amounts. It goes on to say $20,000 as civil judgment for each of the families named in the indictment, and also directed the state to notice restitution for hearing if the parties cannot stipulate to any amount within 60 days. And funeral expenses, the parties so stipulated on August 27, 2025 to $28,956.88, and corresponding orders were entered on August 28, 2025. On September 22nd, 2025, the state filed its state request for restitution and motion to seal exhibit, seeking an additional $20,409.32 for Christy and Steve Goncalves, and $6,920.32 for Karen Laramie. An itemized statement with receipts was attached under seal. No documentation showing reimbursement by the Crime Victims Compensation Fund was included. The receipts relate to travel and accommodation. Now, this right here, this fifth footnote we will look at, this is about the urns for Maddie and Kaylee. Now, I know there was a lot of people talking about how the Goncalveses had both Maddie and Kaylee at their house this entire time, and that makes no logical sense to me. I don't think that that's accurate. I haven't seen proof of that. I could be wrong, but I haven't seen proof of that. Over the last week and a half, 2 weeks or so, the Goncalveses have posted on their Facebook page that they did meet up at, I guess, a crematorium or something like that. Somewhere they met up together with Karen Laramie, and they separated the girls into 4 urns. So now there's 2 with Kaylee's ashes and 2 with Maddie's ashes, and now each household both has the girls. They didn't mix them. They left them separate, which is good. Unfortunately, though, and this is really sad, one of the lids on one of the Goncalves' urns broke. I don't know if it was the one for Kaylee or the one for Maddie, but that sucks. That sucks. But it's not like they can't replace it. It sucks, though. It says that for the Goncalveses, it was $1,420 for the urns, and for the Laramies, it was $1,587.79 for the urns. Argument. Plea agreement. The plea agreement is unambiguous about the restitution categories Mr. Kohberger agreed to pay, and once receipts and verification were provided, he stipulated accordingly. This court must consider contractual terms that are expressly provided in the plea agreement, as well as those contractual terms that are implied. And it cites State versus Fowler from 2003. Given the express language in the plea agreement, the only additional receipts submitted that may fall within the contractual terms are those for the urns, which in the footnote does say that they are acknowledging those are part of the funeral expenses, and it is. The state has an obligation to stand by the terms of the plea agreement that Mr. Kohberger relied on, and they're citing Puckett versus the United States from 2009. Now for economic loss. This is where I am going to have like an argument to make because of the very specific terms of the family's GoFundMes. So let's go ahead and get started. Idaho Code Section 19-53041A defines economic loss as the value of property taken, destroyed, broken, or other harmed, lost wages, and direct out-of-pocket losses or expense, such as medical expense resulting from the criminal conduct, but does not include less tangible damage, such as pain and suffering, wrong death, or emotional distress. Now, they're going to get into all the GoFundMes, but I'm going to give you my own rundown from my own memory before we get into whatever specifics they're about to lay out here. As far as I'm understanding, there were several GoFundMes created. Some of them I don't know the specifics of, but I know that there were several other family members and several other GoFundMes created besides the ones that I'm about to mention. When it came to the Goncalveses, they had the most. They had several. Altogether had to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I mean altogether by their GoFundMes, people that give to their Venmo, people that give to their PayPal, their CashApp, people that give them gift cards to places, people that send them gifts, things like that. Now, I know you can't spend gifts, but when it came to the trial, they had a GoFundMe set specifically for the trial that reached a very high dollar amount. They also had one in the beginning for a private investigator. They also did a separate one for the Range Rover so that they could pay it off and keep it. And we have to also remember from the documents that they were originally not going to keep the Range Rover. So much so that the $1,000 deposit that was made on Kaylee's grandmother's credit card to help with her down payment was given back to the credit card because the family said they were going to give it back. But then the family changed their minds, and so they took the $1,000 back off the grandma's credit card. So that's really important to think about too, especially considering the fact that Kaylee had just gotten this thing. And there's even some information in the documents alluding to the fact that the one at the crime scene wasn't even really hers, that it was a lease from the dealership because the one that she had a problem. We still need to dig really freaking deep into that one, but let's continue on with the details here. There was also one for Xana's mother, Kara. I don't know if there was one for the other family members. There was also one for Maddie's mom and stepdad. I think there was one for Ben Mogen. I'm not really quite sure. Again, there was other GoFundMes for other people, for other things when it came to this. Those are just the most important ones when it comes to this information. Again, though, does GoFundMe money that is donated by civilians take responsibility off of the person who's now pled guilty or been convicted or whatever when it comes to these crimes if they are the ones that are taking the responsibility for it? No, it doesn't. But I do understand, again, what they're going to argue here, because the terms for these GoFundMes were for trial-specific situations, and that trial did not happen. So while I know that the Goncalveses apparently gave a bunch of money and stuff back, the people donated that money, and while some of them might have wanted it back, because of the situation, I can pretty much bet that like 90% of the people were like, keep it. I gave it to you months ago. It ain't a big deal. I don't know. And when it comes to lost wages, Steve Goncalves already boo-booed and came out and did an interview at some point where he admitted to having all his PTO like locked in and ready to go. Now let's go ahead and get into what they are putting in here for the GoFundMe accounts. Several GoFundMe campaigns resulted in funds raised for the Goncalves and Laramie families. Specifically, one GoFundMe campaign for Madison and Kaylee raised $73,493. These funds were promoted as going to both families. Now it gives a link right here, and it says that they last visited this account on October 6, 2025, and the fundraiser was taken down. It's gone. And then says another GoFundMe campaign for Karen Laramie raised $48,815 to help Maddie's family attend the Idaho trial, and also clarified that the funds were in fact used to travel to Boise for hearings, including the sentencing, which is fine. Technically, the sentencing, there was 2 different hearings that took place of the trial, but you're still using specific verbiage, so I understand the argument. There's also a link. Let's see if this one works. They claim they also last visited this on October 6, 2025. This document was filed with the court on October 7th of 2025. Let's check this link. Okay, this one is still here. So I don't know if the other link is just bad or what. Actually, let me go ahead and Google it and see if I can find it myself. Okay, if you type in GoFundMe for Kaylee Goncalves and Maddie Mogen, it actually does populate the right one. So I guess they just have their URL wrong. It shows blue in the document, which means it's saying it's an active and accurate link. So I don't know, but this one is still here. A third GoFundMe campaign for Steve and Christy Goncalves raised $85,583 for the purpose of attending court hearings in Boise after venue was changed. Yes, after the venue was changed. They were very specific about the fact that it was really, really far for them to get there, even farther than it was for Latah County, which was understandable because having to travel a lot farther for that, for as often as there was hearings, if they really wanted to be at every single one, like I would want to be, yeah, I can't imagine it was going to get pretty expensive. And it says to see these 2 links. Let's see if they work. Yeah, I remember this one. Holy crap. 777 views. This is the one that announces the family GoFundMe that they decided to use. Wow, yeah, there's a lot of people in here not happy with it. 777 views. That's a little crazy. Okay, now let's click on their GoFundMe link and see if this one works. Fundraiser not found. Honestly, though, it wouldn't be surprised if they did actually take this one down because of the trial not happening and them already acknowledging the fact that they were going to be giving money back. Let me do a search, though, and see what happens. Okay, so if you type in help Goncalves family get the trial GoFundMe, it doesn't populate at first. It just talks about how they're going to be giving the money back and how Bryan Kohberger is refusing to pay anything additional. But then there is the link right here, and you can't donate anymore, but it's still on here, which probably is normal because they are trying to give money back. So they probably can't just completely delete it until they're done with the refunds, maybe. But yeah, it's still here, but you can't give any more money to it. Given the specific funds sought and obtained for expenses to travel to Boise, the request should be denied because neither family suffered an economic loss for that which the state seeks reimbursement. This is true. And if anything, they got a big old boost. Both families did indicate a desire to refund any donations after the case resolved after sentencing, but whether they were able to accomplish this or donors requested funds returned is not included in the state's motion. But honestly, that's not really y'all's business either. It's not. It's not really y'all's business either. The money was there for them to use for the purpose of the trial. They also acknowledged that it was used for the purpose of the hearings. So whatever the other people that donated that money want to do with it, honestly, should not even be a part of your argument. That's just my opinion. Idaho Code Section 1953047 provides guidance in determining whether restitution would be appropriate and states that the court should consider the amount of economic loss sustained by the victim as a result of the offense, the financial records, need and earning ability of the defendant, and other factors as the court deems appropriate. Economic loss is addressed above and in light of the GoFundMe donations. The specific funds for which the Goncalveses and Karen Laramie seek reimbursement travel to Boise. There is no sustained economic loss, which is true because I don't really think that the Laramies traveled to any of them except for the sentencing things. I could be wrong on that, but it seems like the Goncalveses were like the only ones who actually cared about being present for things. So again, if there would have been a trial, okay, but how much money was raised for the trial for Karen Laramie? $48,000. It did not cost you $48,000 to go to Boise twice. And I'm not even quite sure if they were there at the first one. I don't remember off the top of my head right now, but regardless, going twice for the plea agreement hearing and the sentencing does not cost almost $50K. Let's be so serious. Additionally, Mr. Kohberger has no ability to earn money or pay money given his 4 consecutive life sentences plus 10 years. Unlike other cases where the Idaho courts have ordered restitution for short and long prison sentences, Mr. Kohberger's is different. He will never have the ability to pay restitution, and even though he stipulated 2 restitution amounts, there is no foreseeable ability for him to ever make payment. Under Idaho law, he will never be able to profit by way of book, movie, or entertainment of any kind. And it says to see the Idaho Code Section 195301. Well, if we go to Justia U.S. Law, it goes straight to it. And I'm just going to read you this portion right here. These things can be created. They can't stop Bryan Kohberger from doing an interview for pay or from doing something in way of a book or a movie or anything. They cannot technically stop him if he wanted to from being involved in the situation. But any and every single penny that he could make from this, he wouldn't be able to touch. It would go straight into another account. Let's go ahead and read this. Distribution of monies received as a result of the commission of crime. Every person, firm, corporation, partnership, association, or other legal entity contracting with any person or the representative or assignee of any person accused of a crime in this state, and this is for Idaho, okay, with respect to the reenactment of such crime by way of a movie, book, magazine, article, radio, or television presentation, live entertainment of any kind, or from the expression of such person's thoughts, feelings, opinions, or emotions regarding such crime, shall pay over to the state treasurer any monies which would otherwise, by terms of such contract, be owing to the person so convicted or his representatives. The state treasurer shall deposit such monies in an escrow account for the benefit of and payable to any victim of crimes committed by such person, provided that such person is eventually convicted of the crime or is acquitted on the ground of mental disease or defect, excluding responsibility, and provided further that such victim or his personal representative within 5 years of the date the escrow account has been established brings a civil action in a court of competent jurisdiction and recovers a money judgment against such person or his representatives. I, in my lay brain, am understanding it this way. If Netflix went to Bryan Kohberger via Ann Taylor or however they approached him and were like, we want to do a tell-all interview, we'll pay you $100,000 or whatever they offered him. If he were to agree to that and Netflix would cut a check for $100,000 to Bryan Kohberger, he would not see a single penny from that money. It would be taken, put in an escrow account, and the families would have 5 years from the date that it was put in the account, from how it sounds, to then go to court and have a judge approve a judgment for the money to be moved from said escrow account to the victims' accounts for their compensation. So yeah, technically he could go out and do every and all the things, but he can't make any money from it. He can't. So maybe a form of showing any sort of remorse, again, if he's truly guilty, because we're still on the fence here. No answers. No answers. No working narrative. We are still trying to comprehend what exactly happened, and the state is not setting out a timeline, and even the Goncalves family themselves are claiming the state's not doing their job. They're not laying out the information. Olivia Goncalves, Kaylee Goncalves' sister, went and spoke with the state directly the exact same time that this was posted on October 6, 2025. And she came out with more questions than answers. We still have so much to cover in this case. But again, in any sort of like reality that makes sense, if somebody was even a little bit remorseful for what they did and they knew that this was a stipulation, they could technically go out and do all the interviews, sign all the contracts, and know that all of the money is going to go to the victims' families, and just make sure that that's what they do as much as humanly possible until they die. I'm just saying, it's a thing that could be done if you really are truly sorry for something. I haven't seen it done yet, though. In conclusion, for all of the reasons stated above, Mr. Kohberger objects to the request for additional restitution. He waives his own attendance at a hearing on this matter and requests that he not be transported because his defense counsel will be present. I mean, honestly, the entire thing is going to be over Zoom anyway, so that wasn't even going to be a thing. Now, the state has filed a response. I'm not going to read the entire document because it's another 5 pages. I'm just going to go over the highlights of it. And as always, the links for both of these documents directly will be in the description box. What they're basically arguing here in the beginning of this is that the state was under the assumption that the Crime Victims Compensation Fund was going to be paying for lodging and expenses, but these people are not the victims. In my situation, that's how it should have been handled. It wasn't handled that way. I had to make my own choices. For this situation, if Kaylee and Maddie and Xana and Ethan would have still been alive and had to go to trial, then they would have had all of their expenses covered in that way. But these are the family members. So it's not the same thing. If I were to have actually died that night, my parents couldn't have gotten any sort of funding because of that happening. That's just not how that works. But on top of that, the state also knew of the GoFundMe accounts. The state knew that these expenses were already going to be covered, and not by the victims' families' pockets, by people putting in donations. They can pretend like they didn't know all they want to. They knew. And if you're wondering what that scratching noise is in the background, it's this. They go on to argue how the defense is saying they got all this GoFundMe money. We shouldn't have to pay anything because of all this GoFundMe money, which is accurate because of who they actually are. They're not the victims. They're the family members of the actual victims. So their argument right here to me It doesn't work. The defendant argues that the requested restitution should not qualify as direct economic loss since the victims' families received third-party donations. Under Idaho Code 195304 and controlling precedent, directly injured victims may receive full restitution despite third-party payments unless those third parties qualify as statutory victims through contractual obligations to pay. Directly injured victims may receive full restitution. Directly injured victims, meaning Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, Ethan, not the people that were left here. That's just not how this works. They then go on to talk about how his consecutive life sentences plus 10 years makes it to where he can't pay anything. Honestly, I don't really care about any of this argument. I really just don't, because it's still the fact that if he does anything, he's not going to see any pennies from it. It's going to be taken. It's going to be put in an escrow account. The families can then go to a judge, put whatever information on the table that they have to get that money. What are they wanting him to do? Send them a 30-cent check every month? I mean, what's the point? Now, they do say that there is a history of the defendant receiving financial compensation from family and third parties. I'd be super interested to know. I'm just that person. I'm interested to know. Apparently, while he was at the Ada County Jail and the Latell County Jail, and they have this attached again as a sealed exhibit, like it's extra. It's extra. Yes, there should be compensation given to the victims' families if that's what was agreed to. But when it comes to all this extra stuff that we already know was taken care of by outside sources, this just seems again like it's extra taxpayer dollars. It's just a bunch of fluff for nothing. It's just dumb on both ends, honestly. And it basically just wraps up with saying that this is still a worldwide case. It's going to continue to be that for quite some time, which could potentially do the exact same thing that we just went over. Give him the opportunity to get in front of a camera, do an interview, make some sort of money that would end up going into an escrow account with the state treasurer. So they know that that's already a possibility, and they know that he can't actually make any money off of that himself. So then what's the point of all of this? Because again, I understand the original amounts. There should always be something in the procedure to where it's across the board. This is how this goes. And again, the defense has already agreed to that. So while, yeah, it's not really a good look to argue this kind of thing based off of the fact you're still claiming to be guilty, it's also understandable to argue the argument that, hey, there was no trial. They received tens of thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to go to said trial that didn't happen. The money they did get more than compensated lost wages and travel expenses for the 2 dates that they did have for the plea agreement change or the plea change and then the sentencing itself. So why should there be extra money that has to be paid in restitution when it didn't go to trial? There were funds already created. It didn't come out of your pocket. I understand that argument. They're not arguing the base. They're arguing the additional. But again, in my generalized statement, my generalized opinion, if there's normal compensation that's paid over, it shouldn't matter if there's outside sourcing. It shouldn't matter if there was a GoFundMe. What's done by the good of humanity, as rare as it is, does not take away the responsibility from the person who committed the evil act. And again, that's just a generalized opinion. Now, I wasn't sure if this was going to be a viewable hearing. There wasn't anything showing up as upcoming on the YouTube page, and the live stream page on the district portal itself for Judge Hippler was showing basically the exact same thing. No working media at this point in time, basically. So I sent an email to the Kohberger case email address and asked what was going to be happening with this, and they responded to me right as I started downloading this. So I had to stop the download and edit this in really quickly. They said, yes, it will be being streamed from their normal channels. So I will go live at 10:45-ish Central Time tomorrow. I will go ahead and have the live stream up and ready to go and attached to this video down in the description box so that we can view this live together. But that's it, you guys. Let me know what you guys are thinking about this down in the comments, and let me know what you think is going to happen tomorrow. Given Judge Hippler's track record, do you think that he's going to see the common sense of this and do the right thing and make it to where, yeah, your base, you're going to be responsible for. All this extra stuff, yeah, the GoFundMe's make sense. I honestly don't know. For me, it's up in the air. The judge very much has some sort of disgust and hatred towards Kohberger, which I understand if he really truly believes that Kohberger is guilty. But seeing all the evidence yourself, I don't know how he could be, but he's been biased literally from utterance one. Let's just remember that. But he also has a really not okay taste in his mouth for the Goncalveses because of what already happened whenever the plea was accepted. So I don't know. It could go either way, but let me know what you guys are thinking down in the comments. If you like the way that I present this information and give my opinion, please don't forget to leave a like on the way out. Subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed already. And please don't forget to make sure that that notification bell is set to all so you don't miss any of my rants, reviews, reactions, updates, or deep dives. See y'all.